Calla, Lilies, and Crime. A Petal Pusher's Flower Shop Cozy Mystery. Book 13. Written by Lena Turner. Digital narration by Lena Turner. "How does that look, Mrs. Thompson?" I asked, standing behind the woman seated in my chair. I'd been a hairdresser since my early 20s and loved my profession. I didn't consider myself creative in the traditional sense, but when it came to hair, finding the best cut for someone's face or the right color for their skin tone, I knew I had a talent. I enjoyed helping people feel like the most beautiful version of themselves. "You do amazing work, Katy," Mrs. Thompson said. "I wasn't sure I'd like going this short, but I should have known if you thought it would look good, then it would. I also like how you went a little lighter with the color. I think it's perfect for summer, both the cut and the color. When fall comes, we can let it grow a little longer and take the color a bit darker. Whatever you think, dear." "Go ahead up to the front and Jasmine will take care of you," I said. Mrs. Thompson left for the front while I cleaned my station and waited for my next appointment. Later, Jasmine, still in beauty school and working at the front desk and as the shampoo girl, walked back to my station. It wasn't unusual for Jasmine to come talk to me for any number of reasons, but I hoped it wasn't because a client was dissatisfied. I hated the thought of an unhappy customer. That wasn't good in my business. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "Everything's fine. But you got a phone call while you were doing Mrs. Thompson's hair, so I wanted to give you the message." I took the slip of paper Jasmine handed me and was surprised to see the name Ellen Whitlock. Ellen was the mother of someone who used to work for me. Darlene had worked at the salon for quite a while, and a while back she left for a short trip and never came back. Ellen had called me the day she first realized something was wrong, and I'd been checking in when I could, but always felt bad. Each conversation seemed to hurt Ellen more than the last, and I hated that I never had good news to give her, so I'd been calling less and less. I checked my watch and glanced at my schedule. I had a small break, so I headed to the break room for some privacy and dialed Ellen's number. She answered almost immediately, as if she had been waiting by the phone. "Katy, thank you for calling," Ellen said. "Of course. Is there news about Darlene?" I asked, nervous to hear the answer. "Yes. When do you finish work?" "I will be done in about 2 hours. Is Darlene okay?" "Can you come to my house after work?" "Sure," I replied. "I'll fill you in when you get here. Just hurry." I could hear tension in her voice. "Has Darlene been found?" I pressed, not wanting to wait for the news. "No, not yet. I'll explain everything when you get here." "Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can," I said, then hung up. I returned to the front, where my next customer, Sarah, waited. I was so distracted I had to ask Sarah to repeat herself 3 times before I finally refocused. I managed to give my full attention to each client for the rest of the day. When my last appointment was finished, I headed to Ellen Whitlock's home, letting my mind run through every possible scenario. Finally arriving at the house, I walked up the steps just as the door opened. Ellen must have been waiting for me. "Come in," Ellen said, shutting the door. "Can I get you something to drink?" "No, I'm fine. Please tell me about Darlene. Has she been found?" Ellen's eyes filled with tears. "Not yet. But I received this last night," she said, picking up a plain white envelope from the coffee table. We sat together on the couch as I took it from her. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. On it, a few lines were written. "If you want to see your daughter alive again, be prepared to leave $50,000 in unmarked bills and all savings bonds. Further instructions to follow." "You got this last night?" I asked. "Yes, I know what you're going to say, that the odds someone has been holding her for ransom all this time are slim, that kidnappers usually demand money right away." "But," I cut her off gently. "So, have you actually heard from Darlene?" "I got a call last night too," Ellen said. "From Darlene?" "I'm not sure. I think it was her. Before you ask how I wouldn't know my own daughter's voice, there was a lot of noise in the background and it was very staticky. I know it was a female voice, and I'm almost certain it was Darlene." I said nothing. The statistics for missing persons after the first 48 hours weren't hopeful, and I knew Ellen understood that. There was no need to state the obvious. Did she say anything that let you know it was really her? I asked. No, Ellen admitted, twisting her hands together. I just know in my bones it was her. My heart sank. The last thing I wanted was to encourage false hope, but Ellen seemed sincere and desperate. Even if I can't be 100% sure, Ellen said quietly, I just feel it. Did you take this to the police? Of course. They told me they can't be sure it was her, and chances are it isn't. But if the caller reaches out again, they want me to try to keep her on the line longer. Ask her some questions only Darlene would know. It sounds like the police are doing what they can, I said. They are. Honestly, though, they keep reminding me the odds of Darlene being alive are very slim. I agreed, but saying so out loud would be cruel, so of course I didn't. Ellen, I'm not sure how I can help. Did you just call me over to tell me this, or is there something I can do for you? You're the only person I could think of to call. Darlene's gone, her father's dead, her grandparents are gone, and I have no siblings. I just needed to talk to someone. But, Ellen hesitated, I also want you to help me find my daughter. This is a sign she's alive. Will you help me? I couldn't say no, and now I knew how Presley felt. My fiancé, Willie, would not be thrilled about my involvement, but I'd deal with that later. Of all the times for Presley to be out of town, it had to be now, right when someone wanted me to help solve a mystery. Presley was usually the one drawn into these situations, but she'd left yesterday for a floral show in Chicago. Still, it was dinner time, so maybe she'd be available. I put my phone in the hands-free holder and dialed her number. Hey, her voice came through the speaker. How are things back home? Things are fine, but something really interesting happened. Oh, what's up? Darlene's mom called me. Ellen? Yes. Is there some news about Darlene? Not exactly, I said, then explained what Ellen had told me. She really thinks that was Darlene? Presley asked. She didn't have to say the rest of what she was thinking. I was thinking the same thing. She told the police, but you know there isn't much they can do unless the caller contacts her again. I'm sure they checked the number, but there's probably not much else. That's why I'm confused about what she expects me to do. Did you tell her you'd help? Of course. I didn't know what else to say. I heard Presley laughing on the other end. What's so funny? Oh, nothing. I just think it's funny for once you're the one in this position. Well, I don't see the humor. I promised to help her and I have no idea what to do. What if I give her false hope just to disappoint her? Just start by finding out as much as you can. What was going on with Darlene before she disappeared would be a good place to start. I know she hadn't been her usual self. She seemed preoccupied. I asked her about it, but she just said she had personal things going on and didn't want to talk. So there was something happening, but as her boss, she probably didn't feel comfortable confiding in you. Try to find out who she might have talked to. You can always go back to Ellen tomorrow and see if she knows anything. What did Willie say? I haven't told him yet. I should be home any minute, and I think he's already there. But I'm pretty sure we both know how he'll react. True, Presley said, still snickering. But listen, it's happy hour here, and I need to mingle. Keep me updated, though. We hung up just as I pulled into the driveway. Inside, Willie was cooking dinner. We weren't living together yet, not wanting to until we were married or close to it, though we still hadn't set a date. Something always seemed to come up. Something smells good, I said, walking into the kitchen as Willie took a pan out of the oven. Chicken Alfredo bake. One of the few things I know how to make, he replied, grinning over his shoulder. Sounds good to me, I said, setting the table. Soon we were eating, and Willie asked about my day. Funny you mentioned that. I got a call from Ellen Whitlock, I said, repeating everything I'd just told Presley. I feel so bad for her, Willie said. I was in the office when the call about her came in. Like she said, there's reason to be skeptical about whether that call was really from Darlene. But don't you think the timing is strange? Why would someone randomly contact her now after all this time? It's sad, but sometimes people play cruel games, he said. Sometimes I really wonder about people, I said, taking another bite of his delicious Alfredo bake. But what if it was Darlene? What do you mean? What if it actually was Darlene? Why would she call now after all this time? Willie thought for a moment. Adults usually disappear for one of two reasons. Either they leave on their own, or they're taken. If they leave on their own but don't want to be found, you probably won't hear from them. But if they regret it or find themselves in trouble, they might reach out. But why wouldn't she just come home or tell her mom where she is, I asked. If that was really Darlene, maybe she's in a bad situation. Or maybe she's been trapped all this time and is only now able to try to make contact. Sometimes people run away with someone else, thinking things will work out, and then find themselves isolated. The other person takes control, and it gets harder and harder to leave. She could be afraid, or she could have been told her family doesn't want her back. There are any number of reasons, but it's still unlikely it's really Darlene. I set my fork down and stared at him, not believing what I was hearing. I never thought of it like that, I said quietly. It's horrible. It is. So if it is Darlene, what would you do? What should Ellen do? Willie raised an eyebrow at me. Hypothetically. Yes, hypothetically. He sighed. There's not much you can do without knowing where she is. All Ellen can do is keep her phone close and be ready in case she calls again. If it really was Darlene, she'll reach out. Really? The chances are good, but only if it really is Darlene, and I know chances are slim it's not. I went back to eating, but I already knew I'd be seeing Ellen again tomorrow. I couldn't say no to helping her. Last night, Willie had made it painfully clear that I shouldn't get involved in helping Ellen figure out whether it was really Darlene calling. He'd told me to leave it to the police at least 5 times, exactly the kind of lecture he gave Presley, and one I usually agreed with. But I felt so bad for Ellen. I couldn't bring myself to say no, even though the odds were slim I could be of any help. That's where I was headed now. I called Ellen this morning and asked if I could stop by before work, and she agreed right away. I tried to make sure she didn't get her hopes up, but I doubt there was anything I could say to prevent that. Honestly, if I were in her position, I wouldn't want to give up hope either. I just hoped I wasn't making things worse. She threw open her front door as soon as I pulled into the driveway. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel before getting out, hoping I wasn't making a mistake. It's so good to see you, Katy, Ellen said, as if we'd just seen each other yesterday. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and I have some homemade cinnamon rolls if you're hungry. You didn't have to go to all that trouble, Ellen. It's no trouble at all. I bake when I'm anxious. You can imagine how much I've baked since Darlene disappeared. I have no appetite, so I either give it away or throw it out. And the neighbors have all told me I can't keep bringing over sweets. They're all gaining weight. I wasn't hungry, but accepting would mean something to her. I'd love a cup of coffee cream if you have it, and one of those cinnamon rolls. Ellen beamed, clearly pleased. She was probably used to doing these things for Darlene, which must have made her absence even harder. A few minutes later, we were seated at the kitchen table. She handed me a cinnamon roll the size of my head, slathered in icing and cinnamon. Even though I'd already had breakfast, my mouth watered. This is fantastic, I said after my first bite. Thank you. Cinnamon rolls and chocolate chip banana bread are my 2 favorites. I'll have to box some up for you to take home to that boyfriend of yours. Or fiancé now, right? I nodded, finished chewing, and reached for a pen and paper from my purse. After a sip of coffee, I looked across the table at Ellen. Like I said on the phone, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I'm not sure what I can do, but I'll try. I understand. I still have hope that she'll be found and come back to me. I don't even blame the police for being skeptical. Thousands of missing people are found every year, though. She rattled off several statistics which showed she'd done her research. It was sobering. I'd had no idea so many adults went missing each year. Let's start with anything you can tell me about Darlene around the time she disappeared. She didn't talk much about her personal life at work. I know she had a boyfriend, but she never shared much about him except they broke up right before she went missing. Ellen's expression darkened. She dated Paul, the assistant manager at the grocery store, for a couple of years until she found out he was cheating. Even then, she gave him another chance, and another, until she'd finally had enough. That's horrible. I had no idea she went through that. Do you think he could have had anything to do with her disappearance? The police didn't think so, but I never liked him. If he was the one cheating, it seems less likely he would have harmed her, but I'll write his name down just in case. I'm sure the police checked him out thoroughly, so I would trust them. I've been around Willie long enough to know they always look at those closest to the missing person first. You never know what's going on behind closed doors. What about friends? Anyone else she spent time with? Unfortunately, not really. Dating Paul became isolating. I saw it early on, but she wouldn't listen. He wanted to control everything she did, and in hindsight, I think he was always cheating on her. She started saying no to friends until they stopped asking. When she and Paul finally ended things, she really didn't have anyone left. Thinking back, I realized Darlene had always been friendly with me and the other staff, but she never joined our dinners or trivia nights. It was sad to realize how alone she had been. Did she ever seem sad or upset? Did you ever worry she might have run off? I said hesitantly. I can see why you might think that. But no, never. She would never do anything to harm herself, and she'd never just leave. Her dad died some years ago. It's just been the two of us, and we're very close. That's how I know something happened to her. She just wouldn't walk away, no matter what the police hint at. Is that what they think? Of course. They said she's an adult and probably needed a change. I have access to her bank accounts and credit cards. Nothing's been touched, which terrifies me. I understood. If Darlene had left on her own, it would make sense for her to use her money. The fact that nothing had been spent meant someone else was paying or the unthinkable. I took a final bite of the cinnamon roll and finished my coffee. Can I get you anything else? I'm all set, thanks. I was wondering if it would be okay for me to look at Darlene's room. Of course. Ellen led the way down the hall and opened the bedroom door. It's half childhood, half adult. I never changed it after she moved out, and while she was living here after her breakup, we planned to update it, but never got around to it. I'm afraid we never will, she said, her voice catching. I rested my hand gently on her arm. You have to hold on to hope. Maybe that was really her calling. Maybe she'll call back. Ellen nodded, pressing her lips together to keep from crying. We stood in silence for a moment. Feel free to look through anything you need. I'm going back to the kitchen for more coffee, if that's okay. Of course, I said. Alone, I took a deep breath. Snooping made me uncomfortable, but at least I was doing it for the right reasons, and it seemed easier without Ellen watching. The room was neat and simple, with a full-size bed, nightstand, dresser, and a small makeup table that must have been from her teenage years. I could picture Darlene at 14 sitting there putting on makeup. I opened drawers in the dresser, but nothing seemed unusual, and the drawers were full. It didn't look like she'd taken anything with her. The nightstand held a couple of books and some childhood stickers, but nothing else stood out. Then a laptop on a chair in the corner caught my eye. I lifted the lid and the laptop powered up, asking for a password. 1001, Ellen's voice called from the doorway, making me jump. That's her password, her birthday, October 1st. I told her it wasn't secure, but she never cared. I hesitated, but Ellen noticed and said, "Go ahead, I've already looked at it, and the police have too." I picked it up, sat down, and entered the password. Her wallpaper was a picture of Darlene and Ellen at what looked like last year's summer festival. Darlene looked happy. I opened the browser, nothing special, and if the police had already checked the laptop, I doubted I would find anything new. I glanced at the clock and realized I needed to get going. "You can take that with you if you want. I don't know if it'll help, but that way you don't have to come back just to look at it," Ellen said. "Okay," I said, unplugging it and wrapping up the cord. I didn't really want to take it, fearing I was giving Ellen more false hope, but I couldn't say no. We returned to the kitchen, where Ellen handed me a container. "These are for the girls at the salon, and here are 2 for you and Willie to take home. You didn't have to do that, but Willie will be thrilled. Thank you." "You're welcome. Please let me know if you find anything." "I will," I promised, heading out to my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I just hoped I hadn't made things worse for Ellen if Darlene never came back. "Thank you for meeting me," I said to Jared as he slid into the seat across from me at Betty's Baked Goods. When I had arrived back at my salon after stopping at Ellen's, I had spent all day distracted, thinking about the laptop and what could possibly be on it. Then I thought about how ridiculous it was that I thought I was some kind of hacker or something and would have any chance of figuring out if there was anything on the laptop that might give a clue as to what happened with Darlene, especially since the police already had the laptop, which meant they knew everything I was about to find out. That made me feel really silly because it's not like I could do better than the police. If Presley were here, she would say the same thing. "Of course, I would never turn down the opportunity to have one of Betty's lattes," he said, and I couldn't help but smile. I pushed the second latte I had sitting in front of me toward him. "Well, you're in luck because I got you your favorite mocha latte with extra caramel drizzle." Jared's eyes lit up and he rubbed his hands together and grinned. "I can't tell you how much that is music to my ears. It's been one of those days, and this latte is going to turn things around in a heartbeat. Though, to be honest, even the best day would be better with a latte." "I'm sorry. Are you having a bad day?" "Oh, you know how it is. Just some typical annoying stuff. We're not here to talk about my crazy clients. What's going on with you? You said you needed help with something?" I bent over and pulled Darlene's laptop out of my bag and set it on the table. "I need help with Darlene's computer." "Wait, you need help with Darlene Whitlock's laptop?" he asked, turning it on while I gave him the background of Ellen wanting my help and why. Wow. Poor Ellen. This indeed is someone who is just messing with her. I can't imagine someone doing that to another human being, but I can't say it surprises me. Me either. There are a lot of horrible people in this world. Anyway, that's why I felt I had to help her, even though, as you can imagine, Willie is not a big fan of me getting involved. The chances of finding anything related to Darlene are pretty slim, but I have to try. I completely understand where you're coming from, so what exactly are we looking for? Honestly, I'm not really sure. Maybe she had some kind of correspondence with someone that might give us some information. So essentially, this is a needle in a haystack? I guess you could call it that, I said. Just poke around and see if you notice anything out of the ordinary. Jared took a sip of his latte, setting it down and then typing on the keyboard. I am actually a little surprised her computer isn't password protected. It was, but her mom knew the password, so I took it off to make it easier. Smart move. The only reason I even know how to do that is because of the time I locked myself out of my computer at work because I couldn't remember the password. I finally learned how to just shut the darn thing off. Do you see anything? It had only been a couple of minutes, but I caught myself tapping my fingers on the table, wishing he would hurry up. Her email is pretty basic, though there is a lot of email communication between her and some guy named Paul, who seems like he was bugging her to come over and give him another chance, and she kept saying no. Well, good for her. That's her loser ex-boyfriend. Other than that, it's confirmation of her dentist appointment and sale emails. It's crazy how many marketing emails some of these companies send out. When you think about it, you just delete until one catches your eye because you need something. If they didn't constantly send you the emails, it might not be at the forefront of your mind. Yes, that's marketing. But unfortunately, nothing screams good information in her email. What about her browser history? Let me check. He started typing a few more things on the keyboard, and I just sat there trying to be patient, which certainly wasn't easy. It has all of the things I would assume I would probably find in yours or Presley's browser history. What do you mean? You know, the Bath and Body website, Yankee Candle website, that sort of thing. Oh, but wait a second. Here's one I don't recognize. He paused for a second, and then his eyes widened as if he saw something that shocked him. What is it? What is it? I said, my impatience getting the best of me. Okay, exactly what I thought, he said. There is. Are you going to keep me in suspense or what? Sorry. I wanted to make sure it was what I thought it was. She goes quite often to a website called Friends First. Friends First? What is that? It's a dating website. Okay, you're right. You wouldn't find me or Presley, or even you for that matter, on a dating website, but there's nothing wrong with that. No, not at all. This website actually seems kind of cool, as it stresses the importance of being friends and not rushing into a relationship. Okay, I will have to agree with you. That does sound like a good premise. Is it another dead end? Not quite. It seems like she was really striking up a friendship with someone named Guy Carson. In fact, I can see there were a lot of messages back and forth for a few weeks, and then it looks like they added 2 more people to their chat. The names are Amy Richards and Dustin Moore. He looked at me. Do you recognize any of those names? No, I don't, but maybe her mom does. I could ask her. That would probably be a good idea, because it looks like there was a flurry of communication in the span of a month, and then it just all stopped. On a Wednesday, they had over 200 messages, and that wasn't unusual, and then nothing. Can you tell me when that was? Jared rattled off the date, and I grabbed my phone, going to the calendar app and scrolling back. Finally, I looked up at Jared. The last day you said there was any communication in that chat room was the day before she went missing. Jared and I just looked at each other. There was no way that could be a coincidence. Just who were these people, and did they have anything to do with Darlene's disappearance? I went out to the car after meeting with Jared, phone in hand, getting ready to call Ellen. I wanted to see if she recognized the names of the people Darlene had been interacting with in the Friends First chat room. Right before I was about to dial, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was Ellen. Hi, Ellen. I was just getting ready to call you, I said. Katy, she called again, Ellen said in what could only be described as a panicked voice. Darlene? Darlene called again? Yes, she called, and this time there were sounds in the background. I think I might know where she is. Are you sure it was her this time? Well, I mean, she didn't say anything again, but I know it was her. How would she know it was her if she didn't say anything? So if she didn't say anything, how do you know where she was? I had to ask. There was noise in the background, and a voice was calling out stops. She was at a train station. Did you catch the name of the train station? No, I just heard them call out some trains that were leaving, but I didn't hear where they were originating from. I could hear disappointment in Ellen's voice. That's okay. If you can tell me what train destinations you heard, maybe we can go online and figure it out by process of elimination. That's a genius idea, Ellen said, her enthusiasm returning. I caught my lower lip between my teeth, thinking about how to remind her this might not be as easy as she thought. I know perfectly well that I shouldn't be getting my hopes up, but I know it's her, Katy. I can feel it in my bones. If you can email me the list of stations that you remember them calling out, I can get started on tracking those leads down. I'll do that as soon as we hang up. Before you go, Ellen, I have another question. I saw on Darlene's laptop that she was in a chat room for meeting people called Friends First. Did she ever mention anything about that? She mentioned she had joined some kind of chat room to meet people. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I thought it was good for her to put herself out there. She had really isolated herself a lot since her breakup with that idiot ex-boyfriend. Did you know he had been trying hard to get her to take him back? Yeah, I was afraid for a while she might cave and take him back. I'm so glad she didn't, although maybe if she had, she wouldn't be missing. You can't do that to yourself, Ellen. You can play the what-if game all day long, but it doesn't really matter. The what-if doesn't change the way things happened. No, you're right. It's just hard not to. Had she met someone in one of the chat rooms? I told her what Jared and I had found. Ellen didn't recognize any of the names. I did ask her from time to time if she had met anyone. She really didn't seem like she wanted to talk. Moving back in with her mom bothered her, and I didn't want to make it worse by prying. But then again, maybe I should have. The despair in her voice was unmistakable. But I also knew none of this was her fault, and she didn't need to bear that burden. Ellen, I know you don't think it will do any good, but please call and tell the sheriff about the latest phone call. They're just going to think I'm crazy. They're not going to think you're crazy, I tried to reassure her. They're just going to think you're an understandably worried mother, and that's what they're there for, to help. I know Willie would never want someone to not call the police just because they thought the police wouldn't want to hear it. You're right. I will call them when I hang up with you, and then I will send you that list. We got off the phone, and I couldn't help but feel so bad for her. I didn't know how she would cope if this turned out to be a hoax. I was going to have the same faith that she had, though, and I would do everything I could to help her. I pressed the start button on the coffee machine as Willie walked into the kitchen. Tired? I asked. Yeah, I didn't sleep well. I kind of figured that. You were tossing and turning a lot. I'm sorry, did I keep you up? No, I slept fine. I could just tell you were moving around a lot. Yeah, I couldn't stop thinking about Ellen and Darlene at the Amtrak station. You know it's going to be almost impossible to figure out the location of the train station she heard in the background, Willie said. We were both leaning against the counter, watching the coffee brew, and it seemed like it was taking forever. I know, but what if it was Darlene? Maybe she purposely didn't say anything because she wanted the phone to pick up the loudspeaker. Go on, Willie said after a brief pause. You know how in airports and bus stations they make those announcements frequently? I would imagine the train station is the same way. What if Darlene was there, and knowing she couldn't talk, called her mom's number to hear the announcements in order to give her some kind of message? And what kind of message would that be? That's the part I don't know. The coffee pot was almost full, so I grabbed 2 mugs from the cupboard, pouring a healthy amount of caramel macchiato creamer into my cup before filling Willie's. You want some toast? Willie asked, and I nodded, leaving him to make it while I took a seat at the kitchen table. What if somehow she got friendly with some people from Friends First and they were traveling together? Maybe recording the destinations was her way of giving a hint about where she would be going. That would make much more sense if she'd only recorded 1 destination, but you said she recorded 3. Yeah, but they were one right after another, so it would probably be hard to record just 1. Then how do you propose figuring out which one of the 3 destinations she was going to? That I don't know. Maybe there's a way to find out how many people got on each of those trains and how many got off at each station. Maybe there could be a correlation, I suggested. I don't want to burst your bubble, Katy, but I'm sure there are more than 4 people getting on and off the train in Atlanta and at each of those destinations. It's going to be really hard, make that impossible to figure out if Darlene was one of those passengers. He was right, of course. That was one of the things that had kept me up all night. I don't suppose you thought about calling the ticket agent to find out if Darlene was on one of those trains. The ticket agent isn't going to give you that information. They can't. Surely there has to be a way to talk someone into it. You didn't hear this from me, but sometimes a sad story can tug at someone's heartstrings and get them to break company policy. So what you're saying is if I got Ellen to call, we might have a better chance of getting somewhere? I'm not saying anything. I'm just suggesting, he said, giving me a wink and a kiss. I'm going to hop in the shower before heading to work. Will you still be here when I get done? I had showered and gotten ready right when I woke up. It was the only way to wake me up, even on nights when I did get a good night's sleep, so I was ready to go. No, I'm just going to eat my toast and then head out. Well, stay out of trouble today, he said, and I nodded before he left the room. I finished the last couple of bites of toast, finished my coffee, grabbed my travel mug from the drying rack where I'd washed it out last night, and filled it up before heading to work. I grabbed my phone and checked the calendar. I didn't have an appointment until 9:30, so I was just going to go in and take some inventory to place an order for shampoo, conditioner, and color. But I could probably find time to do that later today, in between appointments, and go to Ellen's right now. I was pretty sure she would have no problem giving an Amtrak ticket agent a sad story to try and convince them to share travel information. And I was right, because 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Ellen's kitchen with a blueberry muffin in front of me about the size of my head, while she made some notes on what to say when she called. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. Well, it's not guaranteed to work, but I figured it was worth a shot. It's totally worth trying, she said, dialing the number for Amtrak customer service. Hello, my name is Ellen Whitlock, and I was hoping you could help me with something. My daughter has been living her best life and traveling for the last 9 months or so, and she missed our last couple of scheduled calls. I'm worried. We figured honesty was the best policy, and the story didn't need to be embellished to pull at someone's heartstrings. We thought it probably wasn't best to say we thought she'd been kidnapped, because that would automatically tell them the police were involved or should be, which might make them less likely to help us out. I took notes of her itinerary, but she changed it a few times. I know she was in Atlanta the last time I talked to her and was going to go to one of 3 locations. I was wondering if you could tell me which train she got on so that I can try to meet her and make sure she's okay. There were a few seconds where Ellen didn't say anything and just looked at me. Someone was talking on the phone, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. I understand, and I know you're just doing your job. Do you have kids? Ellen said. The woman must have said yes, because Ellen continued, then you'll understand. Even though my daughter is an adult, moms never stop worrying. I looked at her expectantly and she shrugged, which told me it wasn't an immediate yes. I'll help you, but she hadn't hung up yet, so that was a good sign. I understand. I totally get that. All right, well, thank you, and you have a good day. I take it she didn't give you the information? Not that I had my hopes up too high, but I was really hoping there would be some luck with us, and whoever answered Ellen's call would be willing to help. Not directly, but if I read between the lines of what she said, then my guess is Darlene is headed to Chicago. My brow furrowed. So she didn't tell you where Darlene was going, but she gave you a clue? I'm pretty sure. She said she could confirm that the passenger in question was on an Amtrak train, and then she asked me if I was a baseball fan. A baseball fan? What does that have to do with anything? When I called, one of those "you're on a recorded line for training purposes" messages came up, so I think she was being extra careful to make sure she was towing the line while trying to help me at the same time. She mentioned the Cubs and how well they're doing. She was talking about baseball? How is that a clue? Because the 2 other cities the train is going to have baseball teams and all doing well. The Cubs are having a horrible season. Lucky I follow baseball. Oh, so you think she was trying to emphasize that Darlene was on the train headed to Chicago? That's what I'm thinking. She told me without telling me, Ellen said. This was actually some good evidence to go on. When I had done my research yesterday, the train was getting into Chicago today at noon. If I left right now, I'd be a few minutes late, but I might be able to spot her getting off the train. I immediately called Jared. I needed a partner for this. Stupid traffic. Why is it that any time you want to get somewhere urgently, you hit traffic? And I swear, in the Midwest, if it's not never-ending construction, people don't know how to drive or there are accidents, Jared grumbled, and I couldn't help but chuckle. You're the one who wanted to drive. It doesn't matter who's driving. we would still have the same result, and I would be just as annoyed. Even going over the speed limit, we're going to get to Union Station 15 minutes after the train arrives, and that's not counting parking. I know, but there's nothing we can do about it, so there's no sense in worrying or stressing over it. I miss Presley. At least she would complain about it with me. You're just always so positive, Jared said, glancing over at me with a teasing smile. I know it's horrible how these construction folks can't do their work faster, so we don't have to deal with it on the roadways, I said sarcastically. Okay, that's better. Speaking of Presley, I'm glad we gave ourselves plenty of time to look around the station before we're supposed to meet her for coffee. I don't want to be late to that either, I said. I'm just happy she had some free time. We finally made it to Union Station and parked, and by this point we were almost 20 minutes past the time the train had arrived. We walked into the train station and looked at the board to find where the train from Atlanta was and headed down to track 12. We hadn't quite reached it when it became apparent that pretty much everyone must be off the train by now. Did you happen to see anyone that looked like Darlene? I asked Jared as we scanned the crowds on our way to the train. He shook his head. No. So either she wasn't actually on the train or she made a fast getaway. I couldn't help but feel disappointed. Even though we knew it was a long shot, especially running late, I still had my hopes up, and now we had hit another dead end. They have to be staying somewhere, I said, if she actually is in Chicago. Yeah, but it could be a hotel right here, it could be in the suburbs, or they could be renting an apartment or staying with friends. I know, but I feel like we have to do something since we're here. We are right now. We're going to meet Presley and have a delicious latte and regroup. Now who's being all positive and seeing the silver lining? The traffic was brutal, as it often is in Chicago, and it took over 30 minutes to go a couple of miles because of more construction, which had Jared grumbling. We were a few minutes late when we walked in, and Presley was already at a table waiting for us. She stood up as we reached her and gave us a hug. It's so good to see you guys. It's only been 4 days, I teased. Which seems like forever to be away from my best friends, she said dramatically. I didn't order for you because they have a couple of specials that I think you might be interested in. And you need to try one of these peanut butter bars, she said, pointing at her plate. Jared and I walked up to the counter and looked at the chalkboard that listed today's specials. Ooh, I want to try that chocolate raspberry mocha latte, Jared said. I'm not as much into mochas as you are, but that does sound delicious. However, do you think it would be too much chocolate if we also get that peanut butter bar? Jared looked at me in horror. Did I just hear you correctly? Too much chocolate? Enough said. We placed our order, and in a few minutes we were heading over to the table with our goodies. I took a sip of the raspberry mocha latte, and it was delicious. Wow, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but it might be the best latte I've ever had. I kind of thought the same thing, but I think it's just because Betty doesn't have that flavor combination, and I think we need to tell her. What do you think, Jared? Presley said, as we watched him take a sip. His expression looked like one of those cartoon characters when their eyes bulged out of their faces in surprise. Yeah, Betty definitely needs to add this to the rotation. I can't believe how good this is, though I'm sure it has 1,000,000 grams of sugar in it. Of course it does, but I, for one, don't care right now, I said. So don't keep me in suspense. Did you see Darlene? Presley asked. No, we were late, and by the time we got to the train, people were already off. Yeah, that construction on the way was bad, Presley said, and I shook my head. Please don't get Jared started. I can't handle listening to him complain anymore about the construction. He hadn't been that bad, but it was just fun to tease him. You know, I looked into that First Friends website after you told me about it, and did you happen to notice that in the bio of one of those folks, it said they did stand-up comedy at Chester's Comedy Club, Presley said. No, I said. We hadn't really paid attention to that. We were just looking at the chat. Why didn't we think to look at their profile? While we were logged in on Darlene's computer, it took us right to the chat. I don't think it occurred to either one of us, Jared said. Anyway, I looked the place up, and it's only about 20 minutes from here. It's the middle of the day. Do they have stand-up comedy this early? I asked. No, they don't start until 8 o'clock at night, but I say we go tonight and see what's happening. Maybe someone knows him, and that'll be a clue, Presley said. You're so much better at this investigating thing, I said. I just have more practice, Presley replied. I thought maybe we should call around to the area hotels, but Jared quickly pointed out how that would be like finding a needle in a haystack. I just feel so bad for Ellen, I said. Jared's right. There are way too many places in the area that even if all three of us called, we would have a hard time getting through them. I think our best bet is to try to go to this comedy place, Presley said. Presley had to go back to the flower convention, so Jared and I decided to explore and walk around the city, though it made more sense to hit the comedy place later. It was a nice day out, and even though I was anxious to get to the comedy club and ask some questions, Chicago was such a pretty town. We grabbed some dinner and finally headed to the comedy club. This time, we beat her there and had gotten a table. I didn't realize they would have food here, or we could have eaten here, I said. I think the Chinese meal we had is much, much better than what they serve here. It looks like mostly appetizers, and I bet they start out frozen. As if you've ever met a frozen cheese stick you didn't like? Okay, good point, but I do think the Chinese meal was better. The waitress came over and we ordered drinks and some chips and salsa, even though we weren't hungry. We just felt it was the right thing to do. Soon we saw Presley walking our way. Did I miss anything? She said as she sat down. No, they haven't started yet, and I'm kind of surprised it's not that busy, I said. It looks like they have a few different people here tonight. At least there are 3 people up on that board for today's performance. And if it's like a concert, then the lesser-known person goes first. Maybe the later person is a bigger draw. Jared's logic made just as much sense as anything else. Should we ask our waitress if she knows Guy? I asked, and Presley shook her head. I mean, we can, but we need to ask the bartender. Why the bartender? I asked. Because the bartender is more likely to know people. She said it with such confidence, though her reasoning escaped me. She had never been a bartender. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, she chuckled. I guess I don't see the difference between the bartender and the waitress. Oh, there's a definite difference. Let me go up to the bar and see what I can find out, Jared said. Did you guys need something? I can get it for you. He doesn't have to go to the bar, the young woman said, looking concerned as if she were losing out on a tip by not waiting on us. Oh, you didn't forget anything. He thought the bartender looked familiar, Presley said, and the waitress visibly relaxed. Okay. Can I bring you something more to drink? She asked Presley, who ordered another Diet Coke. The waitress left, and a couple of minutes later, Jared came back. Good news? I asked when he sat down. Yes and no. He said he knew of Guy because he had done stand-up a couple of times, but didn't really know him well. However, the person headlining, who should start at 10 o'clock, is friends with him. It looks like we're going to have to stay and watch the comedy show. Well, I guess there could be worse things, I said. We sat through the first set, and were halfway through the second, and time was going so slowly. Is it just me? Or are these people not that funny? I said. I felt I had a pretty good sense of humor, but I wasn't laughing all that much. Listen, I have to give these people a lot of credit for getting up on stage because I sure as heck couldn't get up on stage and tell jokes, but I agree, it's not that funny, or maybe just not my sense of humor, Presley said, which made me feel a little bit better. And she was right. Kudos to them for even being that brave. Finally, the headliner, Harvey Beringer, was announced and came on stage. He was probably in his mid to late 30s, and right after his first couple of jokes, we could tell why he was the headliner because he had me dying from laughter. What should we do when he finishes? It might seem kind of weird if we follow him back to his dressing room, I said. I'm sure he will come out into the crowd because it does seem like he has some fans here, and my guess is he will come out to shake hands and we can ask him then, Jared said. And he was right. He finished the set, and the stage went dark, but he walked over to one of the waitresses who handed him a drink and then was approached by people. We hung back a little bit, just to give him time to do his thing, but when the crowd had finally cleared, we walked up to him. "Some new faces. Did you enjoy the show?" he asked. "It was fantastic," I said. "You had us all in stitches." Harvey beamed. "That's great to hear. Sometimes I'm worried that I'm the only one who thinks I'm funny." "I doubt that by the looks of your fan club," Presley said, and he smiled. "Yes, I am truly grateful that I have people who support me. And now I have some new friends." He held out his hand to shake ours, and we introduced ourselves. "Well, I'm on again tomorrow if you want to come back," he said. "Actually, we have a question," I said. "Shoot." "Do you know a guy with the name Guy Carson?" I could tell Harvey was trying to keep his expression neutral, but he definitely felt some type of way about Guy Carson. "Why do you ask?" he said, his voice flat. "Have you talked to him recently?" I asked. "Listen, if you're friends with Guy, while I appreciate your support, I don't want any part of it." That struck a chord of fear in my heart. "We're looking for a friend who's missing, and one of the last people she talked to was him. We're just trying to find her," I said. Harvey looked around. "Follow me," he said, and took us into a back room and sat down at a table, motioning for us to do the same. It looked like a room they might use for private parties or something. "If your friend was mixed up with Guy, you should be worried," he said. "I don't mean to alarm you, but Guy isn't a nice person. He comes across as friendly and presents himself well, but once your defenses are down because you think he's a nice guy, that's when you need to watch out. He is only out for one thing, and that usually has to do with greed. I would call him a very accomplished scam artist." "What do you mean, scam artist?" Presley asked. "He is really smart. So smart that if he put the same effort into legitimate pursuits, I have no doubt he would be wealthy. But I think it's the thrill of knowing he's doing something wrong that motivates him. He constantly moves from one scam to another, often dragging people into it with him, sometimes unknowingly, and then keeps them from getting out through blackmail," Harvey said. "Did he blackmail you?" Jared asked. I was glad he did because I was wondering the same thing. "He tried. Yes, I fell for one of his scams, but I realized it pretty quickly. Once I figured it out, I told him to go ahead and try to blackmail me, and I would be more than happy to face any repercussions for my involvement." I don't think he was used to hearing that because he didn't say another word, and soon after, he was gone, and I didn't see him again. "Who didn't you see again?" a waitress said, sticking her head in the room. "Can I get you guys anything?" "No, and I was talking about that Guy Carson," Harvey said. "He was never a favorite of mine, or of a lot of people. But he was just in here the other day. I'm surprised you didn't see him." "What day?" Harvey asked, looking puzzled. "On Tuesday." "I was off Tuesday." "Tuesday as in this past Tuesday," I said. "Tuesday was just a couple of days ago. If he had been here on Tuesday, then Darlene had taken the train in by herself, which raised the question of why, if she wanted to come home, she hadn't done so if she were alone on the train." "Yeah, this past Tuesday. He was in here with a female, but you wouldn't have thought he had once been a regular because he acted like he didn't even know any of us, which, to be honest, was kind of all right with me," she said. "Was one of the people he was with a blonde about my age?" I asked. Maybe Darlene hadn't been on the train today, but the waitress shook her head. "No, this was an older lady, probably in her 60s. They kind of looked alike, and when I initially saw them together, I thought maybe they were mother and son. But like I said, he acted like he had never been here before, and I didn't really like him in the first place, so I didn't feel the need to make any small talk." "So you didn't hear anything they were talking about?" I said, grasping at straws. "No, not when they were in here anyway." "What do you mean?" Presley asked. "Hey, Carla," the waitress called over her shoulder to, I presume, another waitress. She came into our sight, and our waitress started talking again. "Did you see Guy Carson and the woman he was with arguing outside?" Carla wrinkled her nose, and it seemed like she wasn't a huge fan of his either. "Yeah, I don't know what their deal was, but I can tell you when they left, they certainly weren't happy with each other." Did they leave together? I asked. No. I was outside on my break, sitting in the car talking to my boyfriend, and they came outside and got into a screaming match in the parking lot. Their voices carried, but not the words. Why all the interest in that jerk, she said, and I figured there was no reason not to tell her, so I filled her in on the situation. Well, I hope for your friend's sake she didn't get mixed up with him, Carla said, pretty much mimicking what Harvey had said, which didn't make me feel any better whatsoever. Would you do me a favor? I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out one of my salon business cards. Katy's Classy Cuts was printed across the front in blue lettering, and my cell number ran along the bottom. I slid the card across the counter toward her. Would you keep this and call me if he comes back in, but don't tell him someone has been in here looking for him? Sure. And don't worry. Your secret is safe with me. No one in this place likes him, at least not once they get to know him. He is definitely bad news, she said, setting the card next to the register. Minutes later, she also said if she heard anything or saw a guy, she would let us know. I also shared a picture of Darlene in case any of them saw her. We left, and I caught myself dragging my feet as we headed for the door. Well, that was disappointing, I said as we walked out of the comedy club. It could be worse. At least we know he's in town, so even though we didn't see Darlene, I feel like it's a little bit more of a sign that she's here. If he wasn't on the train with her and she really has been trying to call her mom, then she could escape and come home, I said. Not necessarily. There are other people besides her who could be traveling together, so maybe she came in early while the others traveled with her. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm just now even more worried after hearing what kind of person that guy is. Me too, Presley said. We just have to keep the faith that we'll find her. I would love that, I replied. Jared and I walked her to her car. Well, let me know how things go, she said, and she got in and drove away. Jared and I went to our hotel. About an hour later, we were settled into our room. He had decided to stick around and go to the comedy club and drive back in the morning. Right now, we were just chatting. You said you brought Darlene's laptop, didn't you? He said. Yeah. Why? Well, one thing I didn't look at was when their accounts were created. I'm not sure how that might help us, but I am kind of curious. Maybe they've done this to other people on this platform. I got up and went to my bag, pulling out Darlene's computer and handing it to Jared. He opened it up and started typing, and I waited beside him, not sure what he was looking for or what he might find. It's really interesting. All of them created their accounts within days of each other. You can have all of your chats, public or private, and it looks like there was another public chat that Guy was in. But this screen name isn't an actual name, it just says New Leaf 22. Can you tell what they were talking about? No, it doesn't let you see what was said, just who they were talking to, which is a huge tease in my opinion. What if you thought your significant other was cheating, and you could see they were talking to someone, but not what they were actually saying, Jared said? Wouldn't knowing they were on a website like that be enough? Would you really need to see, and would you really want to see what it is they were talking about? Yeah, you're probably right. I wouldn't want to know. We had hit a dead end. We knew that Guy was in town, or at least he was a couple of days ago. We knew Darlene might be in town if she actually took the train she was ticketed for, but we still didn't know if that was her on the phone, if she really was wanting to get home, and if she was in trouble. I knew Ellen was probably anxiously awaiting a call for an update, but right now I just didn't have anything to tell her, and that was a hard pill to swallow. The next morning, Jared and I decided that even though it was probably futile, we would attempt to check some of the hotels around the train station. It was definitely a needle in the haystack moment, but taking some action settled me. At least I would feel like I was doing something worthwhile. We drove back to the station and had coffee at a cute little shop. Of course, it wasn't as delicious as Betty's, but it was fun trying new places. I leaned my head back to take my last sip and set my cup down. Are you ready? I asked Jared. I'm done with this one, but I think this is going to be a second latte day. Do you want anything else? I think I'm good. Jared got his coffee, and I almost regretted not getting another one, as it really did smell good. "We should probably divide and conquer, don't you think?" I said to Jared. "Yeah, that makes sense. What should we say?" "I have a picture of Darlene. I thought we could just say our friend is missing and that we're trying to find her. Keep it simple." "That's kind of what I figured. You can take the north side of the street and I'll take the south side. We can meet up here at the coffee shop in about an hour?" "Sounds good. And it goes without saying, if you hear something positive, call me." Jared headed off in his direction, and I headed off in mine. If nothing else, at least it was a nice day to be out walking around. I got to the 4th hotel, finding it quite surprising that there were so many small hotels in the area. I wouldn't have expected that. However, it was often disheartening because no one had seen her. There was no way we were actually going to find her by going to hotels, as there were way too many, and it would take forever. So I was right back to feeling like this was completely futile. I shot off a quick text to Jared to see if he had any luck, and his answer was no. He suggested we expand our search a little. Even though it might have been wasted time, I was happy to have such a good friend who was willing to essentially act like a door-to-door salesman for someone he didn't really even know. I crossed one street and started heading back, wondering if there was some law about the number of hotels on a certain side of the street because there didn't seem to be as many on my side. At least the positive was that everyone was helpful and somewhat concerned that we couldn't find our friend, which restored a little bit of my faith in humanity. I was close to the coffee shop when my phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. I saw it was Calla, and my heart started pounding with excitement. "Hi, Calla," I said when I answered. "Katy, it's Calla," she said, giggling. "But you already knew that." "I'm calling because Guy just came in here." "What?" "Yeah, he just came in, sat down, ordered a drink, and asked for the lunch menu. I gave it to him and then came out back to call you. If you can get over here soon enough, maybe you can talk to him and ask him about your friend." "Thank you so much for calling. We will be there as soon as we can." I hung up and immediately texted Jared to tell him what was going on. Both Jared and I were out of breath when we got back to the coffee shop, so we didn't say much as we jumped in the car to head back to the comedy club. After a few blocks, Jared spoke up after catching his breath. "I really need to get back to the gym. What exactly did Calla say?" "I need to get back to the gym too. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It was only a couple of blocks. Anyway, she said that Guy had just shown up for lunch. It seems kind of weird. If there was something nefarious going on, he wouldn't just randomly be showing up in public. Maybe that's how he feels the pressure will stay off him. Or maybe he doesn't have anything to do with Darlene's disappearance." Both things had actually occurred to me, but I guess I wanted to be more positive than that. I know, her mom could be wrong, and maybe she didn't leave of her own accord, but at least we can say we tried. "I wasn't suggesting that we shouldn't be doing this," Jared said. "I know, if he is still there, I don't even know what we should say to him. Probably the same thing we've been saying to people at the hotels. Just that we're looking for our friend and heard he might know her. Just keep it simple." "Well, that sounds like a plan, so I will totally let you talk then." I glanced over at him and smiled. "I don't have a problem with that," he said. And boy, was I glad, because Guy for sure wasn't a very nice person and had been the first person not to care at all that our friend was missing. Unfortunately, I didn't think that had anything to do with whether or not he was involved. I just thought he wasn't a very nice person in general. "So who directly told you I knew where your friend Darlene was?" Guy asked for the second time. "No one," he said. "We just knew she had been talking to you online and mentioned you were from Chicago and frequented the comedy club. We came up here hoping someone had seen her." It was the exact same thing Jared had said when Guy had asked the first time. I had been pretty impressed, knowing he had just made that up on the fly. "Well, I don't have any idea where your friend is. I haven't talked to her in months, so I don't know what to tell you," he said, looking up. "Well, thank you anyway, and we'll let you get back to your lunch. If you do hear from her, Calla over there knows how to reach us," I said, nodding toward the counter where Calla was wiping down the bar top. He gave a dismissive shrug and went back to his sandwich. We walked over to Calla, and as we did, I caught Guy glancing up at us out of the corner of his eye. When we reached her, my business card was still sitting next to the register where Calla had set it the day before. The blue Katy's Classy Cuts lettering clearly visible. I can't believe his attitude, I trailed off, not really sure what to say. I told you, Calla said. Do you think he had anything to do with it? I asked, looking at Jared. If I had to guess based on his disposition, I wouldn't put it past him. I think he's definitely someone who is capable of preying on someone and blackmailing them, which is what Harvey said he tried to do with him. But there wasn't anything he said that made me immediately think he was involved. Well, thanks anyway, Calla, for calling us. If something comes up again, can you call me? Of course. I really hope you find your friend, she said, giving both Jared and me a hug. As we turned toward the door, I glanced back at the counter and saw a guy standing up from his table, dropping some cash down and heading out right behind us. It kind of gave me the creeps. Should we just head back to Chicago? I said as we sat there watching Guy cross the parking lot. I think we should follow him when he leaves here and see where he's going. I know he didn't say anything that could concretely connect him to Darlene, but in my opinion, he didn't say anything that didn't connect him, if that makes sense, Jared said. I didn't say anything for a second as we watched Guy walk to an older red Monte Carlo. Why not? Let's try it, I finally said, and Jared pulled out of the parking lot 2 cars behind the Monte Carlo. Stay close, but not too close, I murmured. We were in a busy part of Chicago where the traffic wasn't going very fast, which made it easier to keep the Monte Carlo in sight without being obvious. When he got on the highway, I got a little nervous we might lose him. Finally, he got off the exit and headed down a side road, pulling up in front of a house that had definitely seen better days. Jared turned onto the street, but stopped in front of a house a couple of doors down from where Guy went. Now what? I asked. We wait. We sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably closer to 20 minutes. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of street where people parked on the curb and left their porch lights on. So what's our plan here? I asked. Honestly, I don't have one, Jared said. I thought maybe he'd come back out or someone else would show up or something would happen that would make this feel less like we're 2 people sitting in a parked car staring at a house. When you put it like that, it does sound ridiculous. Kind of, but I'm not ready to leave yet. Are you? No, I said. Ridiculous or not, we had followed this guy from the comedy club to this house, and leaving now felt like giving up on the one solid lead we had. I shifted in my seat and stared at the upstairs windows. Jared pulled out his phone and started typing. What are you doing? Writing down the address and looking it up. He squinted at the screen. It's a rental. Leaseholder is listed as a company name, not a person. At least that's what it says on Zillow. Is that unusual? Not really. Though a company name could mean someone's trying to keep their identity off the paperwork. That seems like exactly the kind of thing a scam artist would do. That's what I was thinking, he said. Also, the company doesn't come up in any normal business search. No website, no reviews, nothing. I pulled out my own phone and texted Willie, following up on a lead. Can you call me? My phone rang almost immediately. What lead? Where are you? Willie's voice had that edge to it, somewhere between concern and frustration. We're in Chicago. We followed the guy from the comedy club to a house, and we're parked a couple doors down. Katy, I know. You're telling me you tailed a potential suspect to his residence and you're sitting outside. I know how it sounds. There's no other way for it to sound because that's exactly what it is. You need to leave. If this guy is involved in what happened to Darlene, he could be dangerous. We're being careful. Careful is not being there in the first place. He took a breath, and I could practically hear him running his hand over his face the way he always did when he was trying to stay calm. Do you have the address? Yes. Text it to me. I'll run it through proper channels, but go back to your hotel, Katy. Please. We will, I promise, I said, and I meant it. Mostly. We hung up, and Jared looked at me with raised eyebrows. Let me guess. He wants us to leave. Shocking, Jared said, reaching for the ignition. But right as he did, I grabbed his arm. Wait. Look. A light had come on upstairs. Through the thin curtain, the outline of someone moving showed, a figure that passed in front of the window and stopped. The shape was smaller than the guy we'd followed. It looked like a woman. She stood there for a few seconds, and even though there was no way she could see us from that distance, it felt like she was looking right at us. Then the light went off. Did you see that? My heart was pounding so hard it thumped in my ears. I saw it, Jared said quietly. He'd taken his hand off the ignition. That wasn't him. That was a female. It could be anyone, Katy. A girlfriend, a roommate. Or it could be Darlene. We know she was traveling with this guy at one point. What if she's in there? Jared didn't answer right away. He was staring at the upstairs window, and I could tell he was wrestling with the same thing I was. Walking away from this felt wrong when someone might need help on the other side of that wall. We can't go knock on the door, he finally said. I know. And calling the police because we saw a person in a window isn't going to go very far. They will wonder why we're spying on them. I know that too. We were still staring at the house when a door opened downstairs, and we both froze. Guy stepped out onto the porch, pulled a cigarette from his pocket, and lit it. He leaned against the railing and took a long drag, and then he turned his head and looked directly at our car. Neither of us moved. I don't think either of us breathed. He stared for what was probably 5 seconds, but felt like an eternity. Then he flicked the cigarette into the yard, went back inside, and shut the door. Okay, Jared said. Now we leave. He started the car and pulled away from the curb slowly. We didn't speak for a couple of blocks. Do you think he saw us? I asked. I think he looked at the car and right at us. Whether he connected it to us from the comedy club, I honestly don't know. But I didn't want to stick around to find out. I called Presley once we were on the highway. She picked up after 2 rings. Please tell me you're not still sitting outside that house, she said. Willie called me. We're not. We're heading back to the hotel. Did you find anything? I told her about the woman in the upstairs window and the way Guy had stared at our car. Okay, here's what I think, Presley said. You found where he lives. That is huge, Katy. If Darlene is in that house, the worst thing that could happen is him knowing someone's watching. Because then he moves her, and you're back to 0. So what do we do? Come back tomorrow with a plan, check the neighborhood, talk to people, see if anyone's noticed anything. Let Willie work the address from his end. You did the hard part tonight. It doesn't feel like the hard part. It feels like we're so close and I can't do anything about it. I know, but trust me on this. You've been closer to finding Darlene in the last 2 days than anyone has been since she vanished. Don't blow it by rushing. She was right, and I knew it, even though every part of me wanted to turn the car around. Back at the hotel, Jared picked up the room service menu before he even sat down on his bed. Burger or club sandwich? Burger and fries. They have chocolate chip cookies and oatmeal raisin. 1 of each. He called in the order, and while we waited, I sat on the edge of my bed looking at the photos I'd taken. The house looked even sadder in the pictures. I need to call Ellen, I said. I told her I would check in, but I don't know what to tell her that won't make things worse. Tell her what we know. We found Guy, we have an address. Willie's looking into it. That's more than she had yesterday. What if I'm wrong about the woman? What if it's just some random woman who lives there and I get her hopes up for nothing? Then don't mention it. Keep it to what we can confirm. That was the smart move. When room service knocked, I waited until I'd eaten half my burger and a handful of fries before I picked up the phone. Not that I was that hungry. But it was great procrastination. Ellen answered on the first ring. Katy, is everything okay? Everything's fine. I wanted to give you an update. I kept it simple, just like Jared suggested. We'd located the man from the chat room, had an address, and Willie was working on it through official channels. "That's wonderful," she said, her voice thick with tears. "That is more than anyone has found since she disappeared." "We're making progress. We still don't know for sure that he's connected to Darlene, and we don't know for sure if she's in Chicago. I understand. I do." She paused. "But you're there, Katy. You're there looking for her. That means everything." "We're not giving up. I'll call you tomorrow as soon as I have something." "Thank you." "Tell that friend of yours I said thank you too. And Willie." "I will." "Try to get some rest tonight." "You too, sweetheart." We said goodnight, and I set the phone on the nightstand. Jared had finished his sandwich and was already half asleep in the other bed, still in his clothes with the TV remote resting on his chest, and an oatmeal raisin cookie with one bite out of it sitting on the wrapper beside him. I lay there with the curtains cracked just enough to let in a sliver of streetlight and tried to make my brain slow down. But I kept coming back to that upstairs window, the figure standing there. Was that Darlene? Or was it just someone who had nothing to do with any of this, a girlfriend or a roommate or a stranger who happened to be in the wrong house at the wrong time? I didn't have an answer. But I knew that tomorrow I was going to find one. Presley had texted me the name of a cafe a few blocks from her floral convention, and when Jared and I walked in the next morning, it was easy to see why she liked it. It had that kind of cozy, mismatched furniture charm that made you want to sit down and stay for a while, and the pastry case behind the counter was stocked with things I didn't even know the names of but wanted to try. "I already ordered for you," Presley said when we reached her table. She had 3 coffees lined up and a plate with what looked like some kind of almond croissant situation. The barista said the almond pastries are their specialty, so I got 2. And a blueberry scone for Jared because I know how he feels about blueberries. "You know me too well," Jared said, pulling the scone toward him before he even sat down. "How'd you sleep?" Presley asked me. "Not great. I kept going over everything in my head." She slid my coffee over. "Okay, so catch me up. Where are we this morning?" I looked at Jared because he was the one with the most recent update. He'd been up since 6, sitting cross-legged on his hotel bed with Darlene's laptop open and a cup of coffee from the lobby that he said tasted like it had been brewed sometime last year. "So remember that username I found in the public chat? Newleaf22, he said, pulling the laptop out of his bag and setting it on the table between us. "The one that was chatting with Guy Carson," Presley said. "Right. I went back and looked at it more carefully this morning, and here's the thing. That account has been deleted. Completely wiped. No profile, no history, nothing. But the username still shows up in the chat logs because once you post in a public thread, the platform keeps a record of the conversation even if the account is gone." "When was it deleted?" I asked. "That's what's interesting. I can't see the exact date, but based on when the last public message from that account appears, it was active right up until about 2 weeks before Darlene's private chat group went silent. So someone was using that account, interacting with Guy Carson publicly, and then they deleted it. At least, that's what I think." "Why would someone delete their account?" Presley said, tearing off a piece of croissant. "Could be anything. Maybe they just lost interest." "But the timing is what bothers me. You've got this account that's talking to Guy in public chats, then it disappears. And shortly after that, the private group chat with Darlene goes dead and she goes missing." I took a sip of my coffee. It was a vanilla hazelnut and it was good, though I caught myself thinking that Betty's was still better. "So you think Newleaf22 could be connected to what happened to Darlene?" "I think it's worth paying attention to, and that's not all." Jared turned the laptop toward us. I couldn't sleep either, so I started looking at missing persons reports. I figured if this guy, whoever he is, did this to Darlene, maybe he's done it before. "And," Presley leaned in, "there's a woman in Tennessee who went missing about 8 months ago. Her name is Brianna Cole. She was in her late 20s, lived alone, not a lot of close friends or family nearby. And when I searched her name along with friends first, I found an old forum post where someone mentioned she'd been active on the site before she disappeared. The pastry I'd been about to take a bite of suddenly didn't seem very appealing. I set it back down on the plate. You're saying this might not just be about Darlene. I'm saying there might be a pattern. None of us said anything for a few seconds. The cafe noise filled in the silence. The espresso machine. Someone laughing at a table near the window. A song I didn't recognize playing through the speakers. It all felt weirdly normal for the kind of conversation we were having. I need to call Willie, I said. Yeah, you do, Presley agreed. I stepped outside because the cafe was small and I didn't want the people at the next table hearing me talk about missing women and deleted accounts. Willie picked up on the second ring. Katy, please tell me you're not sitting outside that house again. I'm at a coffee shop with Presley and Jared, but I need to tell you something. I walked him through everything Jared had found. The deleted New Leaf 22 account, the timing, and the woman in Tennessee. Willie was quiet for longer than I expected. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Not the cautious, you should stay out of this tone I'd been hearing for days. This was the detective voice, the one he used when something clicked into place, and he couldn't pretend it hadn't. Tell Jared to send me everything he has, screenshots, links, whatever he can put together. I'm going to reach out to the department handling that other case. So you believe us? I believed you before, Katy. The difference is now there's enough here that I can actually do something with it. This isn't a hunch anymore. It's a pattern, and patterns are what help solve mysteries. Does that mean you're not going to tell me to stop? Oh, I'm still going to tell you to be careful, but I'm also going to tell you that what Jared found could matter. A lot. He paused. I'll call you back in a couple of hours, and Katy? Yeah? Seriously, be careful. I went back inside. He wants everything you have, I told Jared. Screenshots, links, all of it. Already on it, Jared said. Presley checked the time on her phone. I have to be at the convention in about 45 minutes, but I've been thinking about something. What about Paul? What about him? I said. Well, think about it. Darlene's ex-boyfriend was controlling and obsessive, cheated on her constantly, and then wouldn't leave her alone after she broke up with him. We know he was emailing her, trying to get her to come back. What if he's more connected to this than just being a bad ex? Like what? I don't know exactly. But Ellen said Darlene joined Friends First after the breakup, right? And Paul was furious that she ended things. What if he knew about the site? That could have driven him to do something drastic. I hadn't thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on the people inside the chat room that I hadn't considered someone outside of it pulling strings. That's a really good point. Presley had to leave for her convention after that, so Jared and I stayed at the cafe while he finished sending Willie the screenshots, and I finished my coffee and worked up the nerve to call Ellen. I always felt a little guilty calling her because I knew every time her phone rang, part of her hoped it was Darlene, and I hated being the person on the other end who wasn't her daughter. She picked up on the first ring, as always. Katy, hi. Is there any news? Not yet, but I have a couple of questions. Can you tell me Paul's last name? I forget. Harding. Paul Harding. Her voice went flat when she said it, the way it always did when his name came up. He was the assistant manager at the Save Mart on Route 9. Why? We're just trying to cover all our bases. Presley thought it might be worth looking into whether Paul had any connection to the people Darlene was talking to online. You think Paul had something to do with this? The police cleared him before. I don't know. I just want to make sure we're not overlooking anything. Do you know if he's still at the grocery store? No, he left. I remember because one of my neighbors mentioned it a while back. Her daughter also worked there. She said he just up and quit one day, packed up his apartment, and moved. Do you know where he went? Atlanta, I think, or somewhere down south. I didn't pay much attention because I was just glad he was gone. I never liked that boy, and after what he put Darlene through, I couldn't have cared less where he ended up. She paused. It was after Darlene disappeared, not right away. Maybe a few weeks. I remember thinking it was strange at the time, but then I told myself it was probably just a coincidence. He didn't have much keeping him here once Darlene was gone, ain't John? We hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone for a minute. Jared had finished sending everything to Willie and was watching me. What did she say? Paul's last name is Harding. He was working at the Save Mart, and he left town a few weeks after Darlene disappeared. Where'd he go? Atlanta. Jared had been lifting his coffee to take a sip, and he stopped with the cup halfway to his mouth. He set it back down slowly. Atlanta. Yeah. Atlanta, as in the city where the Amtrak train originated. The train that Ellen's mystery caller was at the station for. That Atlanta. That Atlanta, I said. We sat there looking at each other across the table with Darlene's laptop between us, and the cafe noise faded into the background. Everything about this had just gotten a lot more complicated and a lot more frightening. I think, Jared said carefully, that we need to find out everything we can about Paul Harding. I think you're right. I pulled my coffee closer, even though it had gone lukewarm, and took a long drink. Up until this morning, some small part of me had wanted Darlene to have just run off with someone. A bad decision, maybe, but the kind that ended with her calling her mother from a gas station somewhere and coming home embarrassed. That version of the story kept getting smaller. The deleted account, the other missing woman, Paul leaving for Atlanta. None of it was simple, and none of it was a coincidence. Later that evening, Jared and I drove past Guy's house one more time. The red Monte Carlo was gone, and every window in the house was dark. We sat there for a few minutes, but there was nothing to see and no one to watch. Whatever had been happening in that house before, it was quiet now. He could be anywhere, I said. He could, but he'll come back. People like that always come back to where they feel comfortable. I hoped Jared was right. I took one more look at the dark windows before Jared pulled away from the curb, and I wondered if the woman I'd seen in the upstairs window last night was still in there somewhere, sitting in the dark, waiting for someone to find her. When I woke up around 6:30, Jared was sitting in the same position I'd last seen him in, propped against the headboard with Darlene's laptop balanced on his knees and an empty bag of vending machine chips on the nightstand. "Have you slept at all?" I asked, sitting up. "A little. I dozed off for maybe an hour around 3, but then I had an idea and couldn't stop." "Do I want to know, or should I get coffee first?" "Get coffee first. Actually, get us both coffee. I'll need it for the presentation I'm about to give you." I threw on my shoes and went down to the lobby where the hotel had one of those self-serve stations with the little pods. It wasn't great coffee, but it was coffee, and that was all that mattered at this hour. I brought 2 cups back to the room and handed one to Jared, who took a long sip before turning the laptop screen toward me. "Paul Harding has a Facebook account." "Okay, lots of people have Facebook accounts." "Yes. But lots of people didn't date a woman who disappeared and then moved to the exact city where an Amtrak train originated that their missing ex may have been on. And I spent the last few hours going through every single person he's friends with. Most of them are people from home, high school friends, and a couple of guys he probably works with, that kind of thing. But there are about a dozen people who are based in Atlanta that he seems to have added in the last year, and one of them has a profile picture that I'm pretty sure is the guy from the comedy club. I almost spilled my coffee. "Are you serious?" "The name on the account is Derek Holt. The picture is from a distance and he's wearing sunglasses, so I can't be 100% sure, but the build is right, the hairline is right, and he's standing in front of what looks like a comedy venue." So Paul knows the guy from the comedy club. At minimum, they're connected on social media, which might mean nothing. People add strangers all the time, but combined with everything else? It feels like more than a coincidence. I sat on the edge of my bed trying to process what this meant. If Paul and the man from the comedy club knew each other, and Paul had been obsessive about Darlene, and Darlene was possibly being held by the man from the comedy club, the picture forming in my head made me feel sick. "There's more," Jared said. I went back and looked at the account creation dates on Darlene's chat group. The New Leaf 22 account, the deleted one, was created 2 days before Guy Carson's account. All of them within the same window. That kind of coordinated setup isn't coincidence. Someone planned this? So whoever was behind New Leaf 22 knew what they were doing. Exactly. And we need to know where that account was being run from. But that's not something I can figure out from the public side of the site. The actual IP logs are locked behind the server, and a regular user can't pull them. That's going to take a court order or a request from law enforcement. Willie, he closed the laptop. You need to call him. If there's a link between Paul in Atlanta and that New Leaf 22 account, the only way to prove it is through the site's back-end records, and only the cops can ask for those. I needed to talk to Presley. I texted her. Can you meet for breakfast before your convention? Jared found something big. She replied almost immediately. Diner on Clark Street, 20 minutes. The diner was one of those classic Chicago spots with vinyl booths and laminated menus and a waitress who called you hun. Presley was already in a booth when we got there, and she'd ordered a stack of pancakes that was big enough for all three of us, which turned out to be her intention. I figured we'd share. I also got a side of bacon, she said, looking at Jared, who dropped into the booth beside me, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, which wasn't far off. Bless you, he said, grabbing a piece of bacon. I laid it all out for Presley. The Facebook connection between Paul and the guy who might be Derek Holt, the coordinated account creation dates, all of it. When I finished, she pushed her coffee cup aside and leaned forward. Okay. So here's what I think this looks like. Paul was controlling and possessive. Darlene finally broke up with him, and he couldn't handle it. He was still emailing her, still trying to get her back, and she kept saying no. At some point, he connects with this Derek Holt person, maybe through those forms Jared found, maybe through something else, and he either tells Derek about Darlene or points him in her direction. You think Paul set her up? I think it's possible. If Paul couldn't have Darlene, maybe he wanted to make sure nobody else could either. Or maybe he wanted to punish her for leaving. People who are that obsessive don't just let go. That's what I was afraid of, I said, poking at a pancake I didn't really feel like eating anymore. Or, Jared said, holding up a piece of bacon like a pointer, Paul and Derek are working together. What if this is something they both do? Targeting people through sites like Friends First. Paul identifies the target, someone he already knows is vulnerable and isolated, and Derek does the rest. That would explain the other missing women, I said. The thought turned my stomach, but it made a horrible kind of sense. Presley's phone buzzed. I have to be at the convention in 30 minutes, but you need to call Willie and tell him all of this, every bit of it, and ask him to pull whatever the site has on New Leaf 22. I'm planning on it. And Katie? Be careful today, okay? If Paul and this Derek person are connected, they're going to figure out that someone is poking around, if they haven't already. She squeezed my hand across the table, grabbed a last bite of pancake, and left. Jared and I sat there for another few minutes while I called Willie. I've got an update for you, I said, and told him what we were thinking. We can request the server logs from Friends First and see where that account was being run from. How long does something like that take? Depends on how cooperative the company is. Do you think this is real? The connection between Paul and this Derek person? I think it's the strongest lead anyone has had on this case since Darlene disappeared. Paul's alibi was that he was at work the day she went missing, and his manager confirmed it. But that doesn't mean he wasn't involved in setting things up beforehand. I've already been in touch with the department that handled the Tennessee case, and they're pulling their files. If there's overlap with Friends First, we're going to find it. Willie, should I be worried? About what specifically? About the fact that we've been showing Darlene's picture all over the neighborhood where Guy lives, and we talked to him directly at the comedy club, and he saw our car parked outside his house. Yes. Which is why I need you to promise me you're going to let me handle things from this point. You and Jared have done incredible work. I mean that. But if this is what it looks like, these aren't people who are going to take kindly to being investigated. This is a police matter. I hear you. That's not the same as agreeing. I know, I said, and I could practically hear him shaking his head on the other end. After we hung up, Jared and I drove past the house one more time. The red Monte Carlo was back in front, and as we rolled past slowly on the opposite side of the street, the front door opened. The man, Derek, if that was who he really was, came out with a woman beside him. She wasn't Darlene. She was older. Maybe in her 60s with gray hair and a heavy coat, even though it wasn't that cold. They walked to the car together, and he opened the passenger door for her before going around to the driver's side. I grabbed my phone and took photos through the windshield as fast as I could, my hands shaking. Who is that? Jared muttered, keeping his eyes on the road. I don't know, but she fits the description the waitress at the comedy club gave us. We drove back to the hotel, and I spent the afternoon going through everything we had one more time, writing it all down in a notebook because looking at a screen was giving me a headache. Jared finally crashed around 2 p.m. and was snoring. I sat in the quiet room and listened to him snore and thought about Darlene and Ellen and Paul and Guy who might really be Derek Holt. And I tried to make all the pieces fit together into something that made sense. Around 5, my phone lit up with a call from Willie. I grabbed it on the first ring and stepped out into the hallway so I wouldn't wake Jared. I got the IP address records. Did you find anything? Yes, and I'll send them over. This data came through proper channels. It's going to end up in an evidence file. Whatever Jared does with it, he can't share it outside the 3 of us, especially not Ellen. Not yet. You understand? I understand, I hung up and went back into the room and shook Jared's shoulder. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Willie came through, I said. He's sending us the records. Jared was awake fast after that. He grabbed his laptop, opened his email, and pulled up the files Willie had forwarded. Okay, here's what this looks like, he said, pointing. The New Leaf 22 account logged in from Hunter's Hollow at first, and then from the same general area of Atlanta more than 30 times over 2 months. 3 of those login IPs match an internet service provider whose coverage zone includes the block where Paul Harding lives based on the address he uses on his Facebook profile. It's not a GPS match, but it's close enough that it's not a coincidence. So Paul is New Leaf 22. That's what the data looks like. And when I cross-reference those login times against Paul's public Facebook activity, he was offline in every single window. Every single one. Which matches? You don't post on your main account when you're logged in as your fake one. I stared at the diagram. A dozen connecting lines between IP addresses, timestamps, and 2 social media profiles, all of them pointing back at one person. That night, Presley called after her convention sessions were done. How are you doing? She asked. And I mean really, not the version you tell Willie so he doesn't worry. Honestly, I'm scared. We're getting closer. I can feel it, but I keep asking myself, closer to what? What if we find her and it's too late? What if we find the guy and he disappears? What if none of this leads anywhere and I have to go back and tell Ellen I failed? You haven't failed. You found more in a few days than anyone has found since she went missing, and you're not doing this alone. Willie's involved now. Other people are looking at this. You started something that's bigger than what any of us expected, and that matters. When did you get so good at pep talks? I've always been good at pep talks. You just don't usually need them because you're the one keeping the rest of us sane. I smiled at that, even though she couldn't see me. Thanks, Press. Get some sleep tonight, I mean it. Tomorrow we figure out the next move. I tried. I brushed my teeth, changed into my pajamas, set my phone on the nightstand, and turned off the light. Jared was still on his computer. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift, and for a little while, It actually worked. I was fading fast, the day's events blurring together into that hazy space between awake and asleep. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it without opening my eyes, figuring it was Presley sending a goodnight text, or Willie checking in. The screen was bright in the dark room, and I squinted at it until the words came into focus. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. No name, no contact info, just 4 words. Stop looking for Darlene. I sat straight up in bed, my heart hammering. Jared stirred in the other bed. Katy? What's wrong? I turned the phone toward him, and in the glow of the screen, his face changed. That's not good, he said. No, I said, staring at the words. It's not. I called Willie before the sun was up. He answered on the second ring, and I could tell from the background noise that he was already at the station. I got a text last night, I said, and read it to him. From an unknown number. 2 words. Stop looking. When? Around 2 a.m. Forward it to me. Right now while we're on the phone. I did, and the sound of him typing came through the line. Okay, I've got it. I'm going to run the number, but if it's a burner, which it probably is, it won't trace to anyone. I figured. Katy, listen to me. This is serious. Someone knows who you are and has your phone number. How would someone get your phone number? I had thought about that last night. The card had been sitting on the bar of the comedy club when we walked out. Guy had left right behind us. It would have taken him less than a second to swipe it off the counter on his way past, which I told Willie. This confirms you're getting close to something, Willie said, which means you need to stop and leave this to the police. Or it means I need to keep going. Katy, please. I know, I hear you, but think about it, Willie. Someone wouldn't bother threatening me if there was nothing to find. If Darlene had just run off on her own and this was all a dead end, nobody would care that I was asking questions. The fact that someone wants me to stop means there's something worth stopping me from finding. Darlene is out there somewhere, and what if she is in danger? He was quiet for a second. That logic isn't wrong. But it also means whoever sent this considers you a problem. And people who send anonymous threats at 2 a.m. don't usually stop at texts. So what do I do? You let me handle it. I'm serious. I've been in touch with Chicago PD, and they're looking into Derek Holt. The Tennessee case is being reviewed. Things are moving in the right direction, Katy. You don't have to be the one out there knocking on doors anymore. Okay, I said, and he exhaled audibly. But I'm not leaving Chicago yet. Not until I know something. I wouldn't expect anything less, he said, and despite everything, the smallest trace of a smile came through in his voice before we hung up. Jared was sitting on his bed, eating a granola bar from the vending machine and scrolling through his phone. What did Willie say? Burner phone, probably untraceable. He wants us to back off, I get it. He's worried for my safety. And I told him I wasn't leaving. Good, because I wasn't planning on it either. He brushed the crumbs off his shirt. Presley texted me. She's free until noon and wants to meet us at that cafe again. Then let's go. We were halfway through the hotel lobby when my phone rang. It wasn't Willie this time. It was Ellen. And I knew before I even answered, just from the way the call felt in my hand, that something had happened. Ellen? Katy. She was crying. Not the quiet tears I'd heard before. This was something bigger. I immediately felt panic. She called. She called me, Katy. Darlene called? Yes, and this time. Ellen's voice broke and she took a shaking breath. This time she talked. She said 2 words. She whispered them, like she was afraid someone would hear. What did she say? She said, Mom, Chicago. And then the line went dead. I stopped walking. Jared was a few steps ahead of me, and he turned around when he realized I wasn't beside him anymore. I held up my hand to tell him to wait. Ellen, are you sure? You're sure it was her voice? It was my daughter's voice, Katy. I have heard that voice almost every day of her life. It was Darlene. Okay. I need you to call the police right now. Tell them exactly what you told me. Every word, the time of the call, the number it came from. Can you do that? I already called them. They're sending someone over. Good. That's exactly right. Ellen, this is good news. This means she's alive and she's trying to reach you. We're going to find her. Please, Ellen said. And the way she said it, with every sleepless night of the last few weeks pressed into that one word, was something I knew I'd never forget. Please find my baby. I will, I promise. We hung up, and Jared was standing in front of me reading my face. That was Ellen? Darlene called her and spoke this time. She said Mom and Chicago. She's here, he said matter-of-factly. She's here. Saying it out loud made it real in a way that everything else hadn't. Every lead and theory and long night in a parked car had been building toward this. Not a maybe. Not a silhouette in a window. Darlene's own voice saying where she was. I called Willie back and told him. His response was immediate and professional in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. He always seemed to know the right things to say. What should I do? Honestly, stay where you are. Let the police do their job. Willie, I know you're not going to sit in a hotel room. Just please don't go to that house. Don't approach anyone. Can you promise me that? I promise, I said, and this time I actually meant it. The threatening text had scared me more than I wanted to admit, and the idea of walking up to that porch made my stomach turn. Presley met us at the cafe, and I filled her in while Jared ordered pastries that none of us really tasted. The mood was different than it had been the last few days. There was hope now, but it came with a kind of urgency that made it hard to sit still. If we're going to canvass the neighborhood, we should start near the house and work outward, Presley said. Not on the same block. 1 or 2 streets over. Laundromats, corner stores, anywhere people sit and watch the street. Maybe someone has seen her. That's smart. If she's been in that neighborhood for any length of time, someone has to have seen her, I said. Exactly. People notice things even when they don't think they do. The 3 of us drove to the neighborhood, parking several blocks away from the house. Presley took one direction, and Jared and I took the other. We went to a convenience store first, where the woman behind the counter squinted at Darlene's photo and shook her head. Then a dry cleaner's, where a man said he didn't recognize her but to try the place next door. The place next door was a nail salon, and the woman at the front desk studied the photo for a long time before saying she might have seen her walking past the window once but wasn't sure. After about an hour, Jared and I turned onto a side street 2 blocks from the house and spotted a laundromat with its doors propped open and a couple of plastic chairs set outside. An older woman was sitting in one of the chairs, watching the street and folding a towel in her lap. She had the look of someone who spent a lot of time in that chair and probably knew everything going on in the neighborhood. "Excuse me," I said, walking up to her. "I'm sorry to bother you. We're looking for our friend, and I was wondering if you might have seen her." I held up my phone with Darlene's photo. The woman took my phone and held it close to her face, adjusting her glasses. Then she looked up at me, and recognition flickered in her eyes. "I've seen her," she said. "I've seen her going in the building right there." She pointed to an apartment building directly next to the laundromat, a 3-story brick building with a metal fire escape running down the side. "You're sure?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Honey, I sit in this chair every day while my laundry runs. I see everyone who comes and goes from that building. She's been there for a while now, a few weeks at least. Thin girl, blonde hair, always looks tired." "Is she usually alone?" "No. There's always a man with her. He's got her by the arm most of the time, like he's steering her. I thought maybe she was sick, or maybe they were together and he was just one of those hovering types." Not my type, that's for sure. But she never looks happy. I've never once seen that girl smile. Has she ever been alone? Even for a minute? Once or twice, I've seen her take the trash out by herself, but he's always right there at the door watching. Like he's making sure she doesn't go far. The woman folded the towel in her lap and set it aside. Is she in trouble? We think she might be. I've had a bad feeling about that situation since I first noticed her. You can just tell when something isn't right. I thanked her and stepped away from the laundromat, pulling out my phone to call Willie. Jared was right beside me, already texting Presley our location. My hands were shaking as I scrolled to Willie's number, and I was looking down at my phone when I heard a car. I looked up just as the red Monte Carlo pulled to the curb in front of the apartment building and the driver's door opened. It was Guy. He got out of the car and saw me standing there with my phone in my hand, 20 feet from the building where I assume he'd been keeping Darlene, and his face went from surprise to something much worse. I told you to stop looking, he said, and he was coming toward me fast. Katy, get back, Jared said from behind me, but I couldn't move. My feet were rooted to the sidewalk. Guy grabbed my arm hard, his fingers digging in above my elbow, and pulled me toward him. Who sent you? Who are you talking to? Let go of me. My voice sounded braver than I was. Jared was there. He put his hand on Guy's chest and shoved him backward, breaking his grip on my arm. Back off, right now. You need to mind your own business, Guy said, and for a second, I thought he was going to come at Jared, but Jared didn't flinch. He was taller than Guy and broader in the shoulders, and he positioned himself between us with his feet planted. The police are already on their way, Jared said. It was a bluff. I hadn't finished dialing. But his voice was dead calm, and Guy couldn't know it wasn't true. Guy looked at Jared, then at me behind him, then at my phone. Something shifted in his expression. He took a step back, then another. Then he turned, got back in the Monte Carlo, and pulled away from the curb so fast the tires squealed. My arm was throbbing where he'd grabbed me, and I could already feel the bruise forming. Jared turned around and took me by the shoulders, his face pale. Are you okay? I'm okay. I wasn't. Not really, but we knew where Darlene was. I looked down at my phone and pressed Willie's number with a thumb that wouldn't stop trembling. He answered immediately. Katy? I know where she is. I gave him the address of the apartment building. A neighbor confirmed she's seen Darlene there. She's been here for weeks. And Willie, the guy, just showed up. He grabbed me. Jared got him off me, and he drove away. He grabbed you? Willie's voice came through the phone, and I could hear the anger in it. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Just a bruise. Katy, listen to me. Do not go inside that building. Do not approach it. Chicago PD is being dispatched right now. They'll be there within 10 minutes. Get in the car, lock the doors, and wait. Can you do that? Yes. Promise me. I promise, Willie. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until they get there. Where's Jared? Right here. He's right here with me. Good. Get to the car. Presley came running around the corner just as Jared and I reached his car. She took one look at my face and then at the red marks on my arm and didn't say a word. She just got in the back seat and put her hand on my shoulder while I sat in the passenger seat with the phone pressed to my ear and Willie's voice steady on the other end, counting down the minutes until someone with a badge arrived at the building where Darlene was being held. Jared drove us to the convenience store on the corner and went in, coming back with a cup of ice and a pack of napkins. I wrapped some of the ice in a napkin and pressed it against my arm where Guy had grabbed me. The bruise was already turning purple at the edges, and it was throbbing. You okay? Presley asked from the back seat. I'm fine. I just want the police to get here. I'm scared he's going to come back. Willie said 10 minutes. It's been about 7. 7 minutes has never felt this long in my life, Jared said. He was in the driver's seat with the engine off and his hands on the steering wheel like he needed something to hold on to. "Do you think he'll come back before they get here?" I asked. "I doubt it," Presley said. Jared told him the police were on the way. If he has any sense at all, he's putting as much distance between himself and this building as he can. "Which is actually good for Darlene," Jared said. "If he's running, he's not in there with her." "But what if he has her somewhere else? Or sent someone else to get her?" I asked. "He won't. He won't want to run into the cops." "You're sure?" "I'm positive," Jared said, with conviction I didn't feel. I took a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Okay, that's good." "Look at the end of the block," Presley said. A squad car turned the corner, moving fast but without sirens. Then another one behind it, and behind that, an unmarked sedan. They pulled up in front of the apartment building in a line, and officers were out of the cars before they'd fully stopped. "There they are," Jared said, triumph in his voice. 2 officers went to the front entrance, while 2 more circled around the side toward what I assume was a back door. A woman in plainclothes got out of the sedan and spoke into a radio. Everything was efficient and coordinated and fast in a way that made our week of stakeouts and hotel canvassing feel very, very amateur. "This is what it looks like when the professionals handle things," Jared said, reading my mind. "Don't sell yourself short." "The professionals are here because of what we found," Presley said. An ambulance appeared at the end of the block and parked behind the squad cars. "Oh no, an ambulance. Do they think she's hurt?" "It's probably standard procedure," Presley said. "They wouldn't send a team into a situation like this without medical on standby." "Presley's right," Jared said. "That doesn't mean anything is wrong." I nodded, but I kept my eyes on the ambulance anyway. The paramedics stayed near their vehicle, equipment bags at their feet, waiting, and then we all waited. Jared said later it was about 12 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Finally, the front door opened. An officer came out first, followed by a paramedic with a stretcher they hadn't unfolded. And behind them, walking on her own with a female officer's hand on her back, was a woman. It was Darlene. She was thin. Her blonde hair was longer than in the photo I'd been showing around, and it looked unwashed. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, and she was squinting at the sunlight like she hadn't been outside in a while. She was shaking, visible, even from half a block away. But she was walking, and she was alive. "Is that her?" Jared asked. I couldn't answer because I was crying. My hand was over my mouth, and my shoulders were shaking, and I tasted salt on my lips. I didn't even remember reaching for Presley's hand, but it was in mine now, and she was squeezing hard enough that the bones in her fingers pressed sharp against mine. I couldn't have spoken if I'd tried. But I nodded because it was her. "Katy," Presley said softly. "You found her." A couple of minutes later, the plainclothes woman walked over to our car. Jared rolled down the window. "Are you the ones who called this in?" she asked. She had a calm face and sharp eyes, and her badge said Detective Morales. "Yes, I'm Katy, and I've been in contact with Deputy Willie Landon from Hunter's Hollow. He's my fiancé." "I know Deputy Landon. He's been on the phone with my captain for the last 20 minutes. She looked at the ice on my arm. "I'm going to need a statement about the assault, but first, the woman in the apartment is confirmed as Darlene Whitlock. She's being transported to the hospital for evaluation." "Is she hurt?" "She says she's fine and seemed fine. This is just a precaution." The man who was keeping her there was not in the apartment when we entered. "We have a description of the vehicle, and units are looking for it." "Was he the one who assaulted you?" "Yes. He was using the name Guy Carson at a comedy club we visited, but his real name is Derek Holt. He grabbed me outside the building when he saw me on the sidewalk." "And you believe he was using this alias as part of a larger scheme?" "We do. He had a profile on a website called Friends First under the name Guy Carson, and we think Brianna Cole might be one of his earlier victims." Detective Morales wrote this down without any change in expression, which told me none of it surprised her. "There's also a woman in Tennessee," Jared said from the driver's seat. "Brianna Cole, missing about 8 months. She had a friend's first account too that had some connection with his. Deputy Landon mentioned that. We're coordinating. She looked at all three of us in turn. We're also in contact with Atlanta PD regarding a Paul Harding, who we believe connected Holt with the victim. He's being picked up this afternoon. Paul's being arrested, I said. He's being brought in for questioning. Whether that leads to charges will depend on what we find. But from what Deputy Landon has shared, there's enough to consider him a person of interest. She put her notepad away. I need all three of you to come by the station for formal statements. Can you do that today? Absolutely, I said. Good. And for what it's worth, you three did something that mattered today. Darlene Whitlock was in real danger. Without your investigation, who knows what might have happened? Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. Thank your instincts. She gave us the station address and walked back to the building. The ambulance was pulling away, and it went down the block and turned the corner, carrying Darlene toward the first safe place she'd been in weeks. I picked up my phone and called Ellen. She answered before the first ring had finished. Ellen, they found her. She's alive. The sound that came through the phone was something between a scream and a sob, the loudest, most raw, most human sound I had ever heard. It went on, and I let it, because there was nothing to say that was bigger than what she was feeling. My baby, Ellen finally managed. My baby, is she okay? Can I see her? Can I talk to her? She's on her way to the hospital to get checked out, but the detective said she seems fine. Oh my! Ellen was crying so hard she could barely speak. Katy, thank you. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. I'll get you the hospital information as soon as I have it. Is there someone who can drive you up here? I don't want you behind the wheel right now. My neighbor, Helen. She'll bring me. She's been checking on me every day since this started. Call her right now. And Ellen? Yes? She's coming home. I don't know how long Ellen cried after that, but when she finally caught her breath, she said, Katy, I will never forget what you did. As long as I live, I will never forget. Go call Helen. I'll text you everything as soon as I know where they're taking her. We hung up, and I sat there in the passenger seat with melted ice soaking through the napkin on my arm and tears on my face and my phone in my lap. Jared was staring straight ahead, with his jaw tight and his eyes wet, and Presley had her forehead resting against the back of my headrest. None of us said anything for a minute. You did that, Presley said. We all did. I helped. Jared helped. Willie helped. But you're the one who said yes when Ellen called. You started this, she said. Can we go? I said. I need to not be on the street anymore. Where to? Jared asked, starting the car. Home. I'm ready to go home. It had been 4 days since Chicago, and I was standing behind my chair at the salon finishing up a blowout for one of my regulars, Mrs. DiPietro, who was telling me about her granddaughter's dance recital. Under normal circumstances, I would have been fully engaged, since I loved hearing about my clients' families and her granddaughter was adorable. But my mind kept drifting. I'd catch myself staring at the mirror without seeing anything in it, or pausing with the round brush in midair while she talked. Katy, honey, are you okay? She asked, catching my eyes in the reflection. I'm fine. Sorry. Just a little distracted today. That's not like you. Are you getting enough sleep? Probably not, I admitted, which made her laugh. Join the club. My husband snores like a freight train. I've been sleeping in the guest room 3 nights a week. I finished her blowout, walked her to the front, and checked my schedule. My next appointment wasn't for another 2 hours. I found Jasmine restocking the product shelves near the register. I'm going to take a long lunch if that's okay. I should be back by 2. Take your time, Jasmine said. It's slow this afternoon anyway. Oh, and someone sent flowers this morning. They're in the back. For me? Who sent them? I don't know, but there's a card. I walked to the back room, and on the counter next to the coffee maker was a small arrangement of sunflowers in a glass vase. The card said, "Thank you for bringing my daughter home. With love, Ellen." I stood there looking at it for a minute, and then I grabbed my purse and my keys. I'd put together a basket the night before, filled with some of the nice shampoo and conditioner we carried at the salon, a silk pillowcase I'd picked up at the store because I'd read somewhere they were good for your hair and skin, and a tube of hand cream that smelled like lavender. I hadn't known what else to bring. What do you bring someone who had essentially been kidnapped? A gift basket felt absurd, but showing up empty-handed felt worse. So I'd gone with my instincts and put together the kind of thing I'd want someone to give me if I'd been through the worst time of my life. The drive to Ellen's house felt different than all the other times I'd made it. Every other visit had come with a knot in my stomach. Worry about what I'd find, guilt about whether I was giving false hope, fear that I was making things worse. Today the knot was gone. My shoulders had come down from my ears for the first time in weeks, and when I caught myself at a red light, I realized I was humming along to the radio without thinking about it. Ellen opened the door before I'd made it up the steps, which was exactly like her. She looked different. The tension that had lived in her face since the first time I'd come over was still there. You don't lose that overnight. But underneath it, there was something else. She looked rested for the first time in weeks. Come in, she said, pulling me into a hug that lasted longer than any hug I'd gotten in a while. I was hoping you'd come by today. I would have come sooner, but I wanted to give you and Darlene some time. That was thoughtful, but you're always welcome here. You know that. She took the basket from me and peeked inside. Oh, Katy, you didn't have to do this. I wanted to. The silk pillowcase is supposed to be good for your hair. I thought Darlene might like it. She'll love it. Come on, she's in the living room. She's been asking about you. The house smelled like baking, which didn't surprise me at all, but it wasn't cinnamon rolls this time. As we walked through the kitchen, I glanced at the counter and saw a loaf pan cooling on a wire rack, and the whole room smelled like chocolate and bananas. Chocolate chip banana bread? I said. Ellen smiled. Her favorite. I've been making a batch every day since she got home. I think I'm on my 4th loaf. She can only eat small amounts, but she's getting a little better each day. Darlene was on the couch in the living room, wrapped in a blanket with her feet tucked underneath her. When she saw me, she smiled. Hi, Darlene, I said, sitting down in the chair across from her. Hi, Katy. Thank you for coming. Of course. How are you feeling? Better. A little more every day. My mom won't stop baking, which helps. She glanced toward the kitchen and smiled again. Ellen came in carrying a tray with 3 cups of coffee and a plate of banana bread, still warm. She set it on the coffee table and handed me a cup. Cream, right? You remembered. Of course I did. Some things you don't forget. I took a piece of banana bread. It was incredible. Moist and warm, with the chocolate chips still slightly melted. I could have eaten the whole loaf, but I took a second piece and made myself stop. This might be the best thing I've ever eaten, I said, and I wasn't exaggerating by much. I told you, Ellen said, cinnamon rolls and banana bread. Those are my 2 specialties. Katy, I want to tell you what happened, Darlene said after a while. If that's okay. My mom's heard most of it, and the police have heard all of it, but I want you to know too, because you're the one who found me. Only if you want to. You don't owe me an explanation. I know, but I want to. She took a sip of coffee and set it down carefully. When I joined Friends First, I was lonely. That's the truth of it. Paul had taken up so much of my life, and when that ended, I didn't have anyone. The chat room felt safe. It was just people talking, getting to know each other. Guy seemed really nice, and so did Amy, and it felt like I had this little group of friends who actually cared about me. That's what anyone would want, I said. It was. And for a few weeks, it was great. Then Guy, or the person I thought was Guy, suggested we all meet up in person. I was nervous, but everyone else seemed excited, so I said yes. We met in Atlanta, and at first it was fine. We went to restaurants, walked around the city. But then Amy disappeared one morning without saying anything, and Guy said she'd had a family emergency, and it was just me and him. Ellen was sitting beside Darlene now, holding her hand. She'd probably heard this before, but her face looked like she was hearing it for the first time. That's when things changed. He said we should travel together for a while, that it would be fun. I didn't have a reason to say no. I didn't have a job anymore. I didn't have anywhere I needed to be. So I went with him, and once we were in Chicago, he took my phone. He said it was because he didn't want me distracted, that we were having such a good time, and phones ruin everything. It sounds so stupid when I say it out loud. It doesn't sound stupid at all, I said. It sounds like someone who was very good at manipulating people. He was. He controlled everything, the money, the phone, when I could go outside, who I could talk to. By the time I realized what was happening, I didn't know how to leave. I didn't have my phone, I didn't have money, and I didn't know anyone in Chicago. He controlled me. How did you manage to call your mom? He had a phone he used for different things, and in the bus station I took it without him noticing, and then sometimes he'd leave it on the counter when he went to the bathroom or took out the trash. The first couple of times, I only let it ring. I was afraid. The last time, he was in the shower and I had maybe 30 seconds. That's when I said her name and the word Chicago. I didn't know if it would be enough. It was enough, I said. It was more than enough. Ellen leaned her head against Darlene's shoulder, and Darlene rested her cheek on top of her mother's head. The two of them sat like that for a moment, and I looked away to give them the privacy of it, even though we were all in the same room. The detective told me about the other women, Darlene said, that I wasn't the only one. That makes me feel less foolish and more afraid at the same time, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. And Paul. Her voice went flat, the same way Ellen's always did when his name came up. They told me he's the one who pointed Guy toward me. I don't even know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it right now. The police are handling Paul. All you have to do is be here and let your mom feed you banana bread. That got a small laugh out of her, which felt like a victory. We talked for a while longer. Lighter things. Easier things. I told her about the salon and how Jasmine was doing in beauty school, and she asked about some of the regular clients. It felt normal. When it was time to go, Ellen walked me to the door. She pressed a container into my hands. Banana bread, she said, for Willie. You tell him I said thank you for everything. I can never repay either of you. Ellen, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I walked to my car. The drive home was quiet. I was so happy Darlene had been found, but I thought that next time I'd leave the sleuthing to Presley. Besides, I had a wedding to plan. Thank you for reading Calla, Lilies, and Crime. A Petal Pusher's Flower Shop Cozy Mystery. Book 13. Written by Lana Turner. Digital narration by Lana Turner.